Hello, everyone. I am Leah, and I'm the Northstar Curriculum Coordinator with Literacy Minnesota. And welcome to our session. And I'll let Kristine introduce herself.
I'm Kristine Kelly. I'm the Atlas Literacy Coordinator and have been lucky enough to be working on this project with Leah.
And thank you for joining us after a quick lunch. So here is our agenda for today, what we'll be talking about. We're going to focus on the skills and standards that are supported by the Northstar curriculum. So I like to think about every curriculum has a heartbeat, and Northstar's curriculum, we're going to talk about what it is really honing in on. And then we're also going to share ready to go resources. These things are that you can start using right away. That are available for you. There's a Northstar lesson plans. We'll take a walk through the standards alignment maps and also show you the unit projects that are college and career readiness standard aligned. So just want to see who's joining us today and get a sense of who's with us. If you've used Northstar before, if you could just chat and tell us a little bit about your experiences, maybe accessing the curriculum or NSOL, which stands for Northstar Online Learning. Those are the interactive learning modules that we create, or maybe the assessments. We'd love to hear who's joining us today, maybe where you're joining us from. A student in Hamlin MAT program. I also was in that program. Thank you. We think it's pretty awesome too. Looks like we have quite a few folks that that currently are using Northstar, so have some familiarity with it. And then also some newbies, some Northstar newbies. So this is a good place to be. We'll talk a little bit about what we have and the new resources today. Yeah, taking assessments as an instructor is a great way to get to know Northstar. It's a great first place to start. All right. So just to get to ground us in what Northstar is, here on the screen you can see the topics that Northstar focuses on. These are the standards, the sets of standards that we have currently developed. We divide our standards into 3 categories: the essential computer skills, those are those foundational digital literacy skills that students need. And then it goes into essential software skills. And finally, using tech in daily life. So those units in the 3rd column are opportunities for learners to apply those essential software and computer skills to a topic that you see there. And currently right now we have 12 full units of Northstar curriculum available to you. And we are working on other units. On the screen, we're working on information literacy in the 3rd column, and that should be available later this month. And then Northstar is always growing too. So we have an additional set of standards that will join that 3rd column on telehealth. So those standards will focus on supporting learners to access resources like MyChart, if you're familiar with that, in order to make appointments and interact with providers virtually. So we're always developing new things with Northstar. Right. So here on the screen, you'll see the standards for Minnesota Adult Basic Ed. You see that Northstar is one piece of that pie. And all of these standards weave together and support each other. And at the core of our curriculum, the curriculum that we started with, we really focused on the digital literacy skills. However, our resources also support development of those professional soft skills that are outlined in the transitions integration framework. So things like goal setting, using self-assessments for career planning, and other strategies for successful learning. Those are also addressed in Northstar. And the curriculum also weaves in opportunities for learners to begin to start to meet some of those college and career readiness English language arts standards as well. We focus on high frequency academic words and opportunities to apply digital literacy skills to authentic tasks. And learners also have lots of opportunities in the Northstar curriculum to interact with complex texts like websites and computer programs. And so, like I said, every curriculum has a specific focus, and ours has always been to support digital literacy and professional soft skills. It should be noted that that though the curriculum begins to integrate and scaffold towards the CCRS in order to further support students to develop those strong academic reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills, learners will often need additional core instruction. So what a lot of teachers do is maybe integrate and pick and choose some of the Northstar lesson plans to use in their classroom, in their core content instruction. Otherwise, learners might be co-enrolled in like an ESL or a GED class, and then also a basic tech class. All right, I just saw someone said, I love the curriculum for Northstar. Thank you. That's great to hear. We're glad. And yeah, so these standards overlap and support each other. So it's good to not just think of them in isolation, but to think of how, even though you might be focusing on one piece of this pie in your instruction, how are you integrating and weaving in those other standards as well? And we're going to talk about that today. So I want to show you our core lesson plans. So the lesson plans that we developed first. And I'm going to click on this link. This is where you can find all of our curriculum. And all Minnesota ABE consortia should have access to this. And at the last slide today will tell you about how you can figure out like reset, where to go to maybe reset your password or connect if you're having any trouble. So you'll have to log in. And then you'll have to go to admin and resources. I'm just jumping ahead. But all of this stuff can be found in the admin portal under resources. And here on this screen, you'll see that there's the curriculum that we have developed. There's also a great teacher guide. It really talks about everything that we're talking about today too, so it's there for you. And we're just going to visit one lesson plan for Northstar. So I'm going to look at Google Docs today. So in this folder, you'll see that there are the maps that we'll talk about in a little bit. And this is one of our lesson plans. And I'm just going to walk you through some of the features that we get feedback from teachers that are cool, and also that we think that we've been really intentional about creating to be supportive for you. So there's always the Northstar standards at the top in the vocabulary. We always keep vocabulary to under 7 words per lesson. We anticipate that these lessons would take maybe about 2 hours to complete with your class, but of course that varies based on learner level. Our lesson plans are written for intermediate level ESL learners and above, but they certainly could be scaffolded for a little bit lower level. This is our tech concept page or teacher launch page. So the first page of all of our lesson plans is just the page to get you grounded. So it's the place where there might be some information about things that you might want to practice before teaching this, just to make sure that you feel familiar with the content and feel confident in teaching it. And it will also maybe link to other lessons, because each of our lesson plans is standalone. So you can teach these lesson plans in a series, or you can just pick and choose specific skills that you want to target in your classroom, which is really nice. So sometimes we'll tell you, hey, you should try to teach this lesson too, because it really connects well. And then there's also just a place where you can get everything ready to project or to print for your class. Some of the other things I want to point out, that each lesson has a predictable lesson plan structure. So hopefully once you're familiar with it, you can more easily adapt it for your classroom or integrate it into your instruction, or simply follow them to really build in that routine of instruction into your classroom. We know that routines reduce stress for learners and for teachers. So we encourage you to do that. They're set up with a warm-up just to tap into learners' prior knowledge and really acknowledge their knowledge. And then there are learner-friendly objectives. And our lessons are built around an I do, we do, you do structure. So the teacher is modeling and thinking aloud, and then there's lots of opportunities for learners to engage with each other in pair work. One of the most important pieces of our lessons is Pair Explore. And so this part of each lesson is an opportunity for students to engage in productive struggle and experimentation. So to authentically practice the skill that the teacher has modeled and that has been scaffolded through like all class participation or pair work. And now they're just kind of on a computer with another partner and trying something out. And we know that all of us learn digital literacy skills through experimentation. So this is a really, really important piece. And also we have another document that you can find in the teacher guide that talks a little bit more in depth about how to facilitate this portion of the lesson. There are sentence frames and that you'd want to teach to your learners and also that are good for teachers to use, where you're just prompting students and asking them, did you try this? What should we try here? What do you think would happen if? Just to encourage them to experiment. Learners apply their learning through a task, and we always have a check for understanding at the end. So Kristine's going to talk a little bit about what we have added to these core Northstar lesson plans.
Well, I'm going to talk about what kind of was the impetus for this to happen. First and foremost, and I know that many people hear me say this all the time. Many of us say this all the time, like, oh, the content standards, CCRS, ACES, Northstar, they all just naturally integrate. But then the question we get is, could you show us, some of us, how that actually works? And it's a really great question, because we can say how great these things integrate, but it would be nice to have some additional examples. So there was an MNABE grant funded project that we were kind of tasked to think about this. How can we integrate Northstar digital literacy with other guiding standards? And I came on as the CCRS person to help incorporate more and strengthen the Northstar digital literacy curriculum to the CCRS English language arts shifts and standards. I think it's back to you, Leah.
Yes. So these are the things that, thank you, Kristine. These are the things that we developed out of that project. We created some college and career readiness aligned projects. We also call them extensions for each unit of the Northstar curriculum. And we're going to show you what those look like today. And then also we have developed some alignment maps for both TIF and CCRS for planning instruction. And so we're going to walk you through these documents, and we hope that these make it easy for you to tailor instruction to your specific learning environment. So let's look first at the TIF alignment map. And again, you can just find these on that first Northstar page that I showed you in the admin portal. And at the top of each of the alignment maps, it talks a little bit more about what the TIF is. And it also links directly to the TIF. So that's convenient, I think. And these documents articulate the specific TIF skills that are present in each Northstar unit. There's also a link back here to that original page that I showed you with all the lesson plans. And if there is a Northstar online learning module available, it will link to that too. And those are interactive online learning practices that model the assessments. So it gives learners some practice in what that assessment will look like. And also in some authentic practice in, for the example here, it would be Google Docs, but those aren't all done yet. We're still working on a lot of them. So in this map, the way it is structured is there's the skill category, the sub-skill for the TIF, and then examples of where you would find those skills within that topic within those lessons for Northstar. And you can click directly on these links to get to those lessons. So for example, if you knew that you wanted to work on making predictions before and during reading and listening, you could click on this, the Google Docs unit project, and practice that more. Also in this one, there's for effective communication, participating in making contributions and encouraging the contributions in with others, some collaborative stuff in Google Docs. So it is a great way to plan instruction. It can be supportive for just because you won't have to read through every single lesson plan. You can just see kind of how they connect here within this document. And I think it also can help us dig a little bit deeper into the TIF and see how some of those things can align with digital literacy skills as well. So I'm going to go back here. And I think, Kristine, you're going to talk a little bit more about the CCRS now. Shift focus to that.
Yes, I am, because that was my main, the main ask that that I had was to help kind of look over the curriculum through a CCRS lens and determine where would be some ways to strengthen the embedding of some English language arts shifts and standards from the CCRS into lessons. And I worked with Leah closely, and we came up with some ideas for templates and some routines that were important for that work. So just to quickly highlight the 3 shifts and some of the additions that were made to these projects. So these projects are all added to the curriculum that's already there. So as far as complexity, there were texts in some of the units, the curriculum units, and sometimes those texts were visual texts. But there has been an addition of a piece of text that's focused there, that's focused on that particular topic of that unit, that digital literacy topic that Leah has written, and we've looked over, and they measure quantitatively in a place that is appropriate for the level that we target generally for this curriculum. Also, an addition of the TDQ, I see that in the chat, a text dependent question. So there's actually some close reading that happens with these texts now with some text dependent questions, and academic vocabulary. The units call out domain specific vocabulary, like the key vocabulary that's related to digital literacy. But now there's also a short list in each of these projects that highlight the academic vocabulary that's also present, which is nice when we are looking, for the additional academic vocabulary we should be targeting in different activities. The second shift, employing evidence, there is an increase now in requirement of evidence for answers for the text dependent questions, for when students are speaking. There is an additional resource that kind of helps to scaffold some of that academic language when students are working in pairs and talking about the content. And then the writing, there's been, which goes into building knowledge, a summative task that's been added where students need to pull in evidence from the rest of that project or from the other resources in that project. And that's the third shift, building knowledge. There is an essential question now. So each of these projects have an essential question. And the text, the activities are built around helping students build the knowledge to answer that essential question. So the summative task is something where students need to, if it's, can you choose the right computer hardware, the right computer devices that you need. The summative task is going to be students talking through the different options or coming up with the best plan for what computer devices the student would be most appropriate for the student using evidence from the unit. Next slide. So there was some initial connection with some of the strategies and the content that is used or that with the original curriculum, but now there's a much more intentional embedding of the standards. So there is, for example, the Northstar Standard 15 here, Google Docs. Students need to learn how to share a document, be intentional about the difference between what the viewer does, what the commenter does, and what the editor does. And something that was added to that was a CCRS anchor that parallels it nicely, which is writing CCRS Anchor 6, which is about using technology and publishing, writing, and interacting. So there's more of a focus on the CCR aspect of this when students are putting their writing up, they're learning how to comment to each other within these documents, they're learning how to move through like editor, viewer, suggested, that kind of thing, which is important, that kind of interaction electronically, which makes up a lot of what we do every day, is working with Google Docs collaboratively. I'm going to kick it back to you, Leah, to talk about the CCRS alignment maps, and then I will talk a little bit more about how adaptable these projects are.
Thank you. Yeah, so we wanted to work to, as Kristine talked about, build more scaffolding towards the English language arts standards in the college and career readiness, and recognizing that a lot of our Northstar standards begin to lead learners in that direction, but there's more opportunities for them to apply those skills. So everything that Kristine kind of just articulated is here at the front of each map, and there's one of these for each topic. And as Kristine talked about, the units have a line of inquiry. That is what students are eventually working on in the unit projects. So the idea is that perhaps one way that you could use these is that you might teach all of those lessons that are in Google Docs. I think there's 9 total Northstar lessons, and then you might use the unit project at the end as a way for students to show the foundational skills that they've developed in an authentic way. So these maps, they show the high frequency academic words that we've pulled out from the unit. Those are the words that students would see across content, and that they're frequently used in academic dialogue and text, not commonly in informal language. And then we also have the content specific words for the unit. There's the overarching skills in the unit here for you. And then it goes on to the college and career readiness standards that learners are beginning to reach towards in that unit. And again, our units are always linked right here, so it makes it easy to just grab them, hopefully, and that this can be an easy planning guide, because you can kind of see everything at a glance if you're thinking about integrating CCRS and Northstar together. These also can be really helpful to just learn more about the college and career readiness standards and the way that they connect to Northstar. It's just a nice visual example of how like I said, those digital literacy standards can scaffold up or interconnect or weave to support learners to meet those CCR standards. So I think these maps are instructional and supportive. Again, the lessons that you're linking to are sequenced and scripted. They're ready to go. We created them to help you reduce prep time, and obviously to help learners gain these skills. So I can give you an example. Here's Reading Anchor 8, which talks about explaining how an author uses reasons and evidence to support points in a text, identifying which reasons and evidence support which points. And learners do that through annotation of a text and sorting details into a graphic organizer. And in this specific example, they're describing the steps of the writing process. We're actually going to look at this unit project in a little bit. So that helps them work towards that. And of course, in these lessons, like, learners aren't completely mastering the anchor standards, but they're working towards mastery in those lessons. I might stop for just 1 minute and look at the chat and see if we have questions that are popping up. A direct link to the alignment map. Yeah, I can actually show you where you can find these. That's what I'll do. Sorry for the scrolling. So when you're on the Northstar website, in the admin portal, under resources, you'll see curriculum, and then you will get here. And in each topic, at the very top are the alignment maps. So here's the college and career readiness one for Google Docs, and here's the ACES TIF. There's also a scope and sequence document that talks about all of the lessons. And then there is the unit project. And we really wanted these alignment maps to have more details than a typical alignment map that you might have seen in the front of a textbook, for example. We wanted to articulate exactly what students are doing in that lesson. So it's like just a really quick at a glance, like you can digest the material quick and know if it's going to work in your classroom or not to target that skill. So that was one of our goals in creating these. Let's see. So the next thing I want to talk about is kind of, I think, the most exciting thing. The maps are exciting too, but the unit projects are awesome resources for teachers. So I'm going to show you the one from Google Docs. And again, this is in the admin portal under resources, and there's one for each topic. So we developed college and career readiness aligned extensions for each unit of Northstar. And if you're familiar with our regular lesson plans, you'll see a lot of similarities in these. So hopefully they're easy to use and easy to like quickly scan and digest. The line of inquiry is at the top. And in this unit project, students are working on this, learning the steps in the writing process and reflecting on how following those steps might help to create a stronger piece of writing. You have your college and career readiness standards here, and there's some that are targeted more within the lesson, and then some that are we just touch on them. They're more supporting standards, and those are here. Our vocabulary, what we're focusing on. And then there's always a link back to the whole unit. So again, you might choose to teach all of those foundational digital literacy skills for Google Docs before you dive into this project, or maybe the learners you're working with are ready to dive into this project already. You can really adapt it for what works for your class. Just like in our regular lesson plans, it's easy to access the things that you would want to print. Something that I want to point out about our unit projects. So these are, we anticipate, and in the pilots that we did with these, it took about 3 to 6 hours to teach one of these. And that's in intermediate ESL classes and above. So this is definitely a project that you want to break up kind of however it works in your classroom, depending on how long your class is and the level of learners. But also another way that you can tailor these lessons to work specifically for your group is that they're adaptable to what you might be working on within your classroom. So for example, in this project, the application after they do some close reading is to use those steps in the writing process to actually create something, but you decide what that is. So it could be a resume, a cover letter, a narrative, a short research project, whatever your class is working on. So you could integrate this into your classroom. There's a warm-up always. I can, and again, there's quite a few I can statements, but you might be dividing this up, hopefully, for your class. We have timestamps on the chunks, so maybe you just do one of these chunks in your class at a time. So it starts with the before reading, so that's the opportunity for learners to dissect the text a little bit and think about the text features prior to reading. And for each unit project, we've written a leveled text. This one looks like this. They're not always like text in a traditional sense. We have an infographic, we have a PowerPoint presentation. So some different variations of things that learners are close reading. But here they're reading an actual article. And these are written at like a level C band and so students might be reaching a little bit towards this, but they read it several times in several different ways. So the next way that they interact with the text after the before reading is to read for the main idea. So that's their first close read. They identify the main idea, and then they have a pair discussion that's always scaffolded. And after that, there's another close reading where they're interacting and responding to text-dependent questions. And those ask learners to make inferences and to cite evidence within the text. And they're annotating too during that, where they're underlining or highlighting or circling different things that they're finding in order to answer those questions. And finally, the last close reading that they do is always for a key purpose, and they're annotating to fill out a graphic organizer. So in this specific lesson, they're thinking about those steps that they learned about in the article for pre-writing, and then taking notes on how it could make their writing better, and then questions to ask themselves. And they'll use this graphic organizer then to complete the task. There's also answer keys in here, but they use a graphic organizer to complete the task of writing something and following those steps and then revising their writing. There's always a wrap up, which checks a check for understanding with learners, and also an opportunity for learners to be self-reflective about their learning and check in to see if they have met the objective that you have set together for the unit project. So we're excited about these. We think that they're a great extension to the learning and a great opportunity to show how CCRS and Northstar can really work together. Now go back. And I think I'm going to hand it over to Kristine to talk a little bit more about some other ways you might adapt these or use them in your classroom.
Yeah, and I feel like these are a lot of things I talked about when we introduced the diploma tasks in the session before lunch, that, there's a lot of ways that these projects can be adapted. And you could go a traditional route and use the regular Northstar unit that has been in existence, and then use the project after and just combine them for a large block of instruction. You can also use the CCRS projects by themselves. I already know that there are a few that I would like to incorporate in some of my instruction, particularly the project that teaches students how to evaluate online sources and takes them through a process. I think that would fit really nicely into work that I do with prepping students to write to analyze and write an argument analysis. And so that's the third point here, incorporating the CCRS projects into other instruction. One of the projects focuses in on the writing process. One of them focuses in on informal tone. I mean, there are a lot of places, I think, that we could pull these projects into other instruction that we're doing at multiple levels. The CCRS projects essential questions that are there, you could use them as a base for building out a longer lesson or unit. And again, I'm thinking about the evaluating online resources, and I would like to, and I have a little example of that on the next slide, but and then using them as a guide for developing additional CCRS aligned instruction. None of these lead to mastery of ELA standards, but like any other instruction, they help add to what we're already doing to keep moving students forward to showing some proficiency. Next slide. And here's just an example of the Northstar unit project Internet Basics. And the line of inquiry that's there now is what strategies are important to know in order to evaluate the reliability of information found online. The academic vocabulary that's called out and used in that unit, this is great vocabulary that our students who are working on any kind of evaluation of arguments and sources should feel comfortable with. And so that's called out there. The application activity is that students have to find 4 different websites. They come up with their own question and they need to find 4 different websites and then evaluate each of those websites for reliability or misinformation. And then they have to actually incorporate using the vocabulary words when they write a conclusion for each website. So they have to talk about, you know, how they scanned something or how there was bias present, and I think this would be great. You know, we have to do more and more mini research projects with students. This would be great. It's there. There's a wonderful graphic organizer that you could pull into other instruction. Next slide. And here, those are supposed to be M dashes, but instead they're these incredibly long dashes. But some other examples, like with diploma and college prep. Again, support for a research project that, you know, we ask students, you know, if you're going to do an argument essay to submit for the diploma, part of it is you need to show evidence that you have evaluated your sources. Again, short research projects, students can have a burning question, so it's their choice. They can present their findings orally in writing or in another way of their choosing. An information literacy unit, there's some background information and vocabulary. Students could, I love this idea, could actually take that evaluation criteria and apply it to some of their favorite websites or common news or content sites that they use to see the reliability of the sites that they engage with regularly. And it would be a great introduction to, if you're doing any work with Stanford Civic Online Reasoning content, which is excellent. It would be a great introduction to get students thinking about, you know, evaluating content online, and it's so relevant, obviously. So lots of different ways these projects could be used. Even if you are not necessarily the person who's teaching Northstar at your site, I would encourage you to take a look at these projects, because I think that they will find great homes in ESL classes, in pre-GED classes, and in GED / soon to be high set classes. So I encourage you to look at what's there.
Thank you, Kristine. So we encourage you to share your feedback on Northstar. There's a link there, and it's also in the teacher guide. So if you're accessing that, you'll be able to click on our feedback form. We love feedback. All feedback is welcome. We consider our curriculum a living document, so we update it based on user feedback. We really appreciate you taking the time to provide that for us. And finally, you can find the curriculum here. Again, it's and all of the stuff that we just showed you in the admin portal under resources. If you don't have access to it, or if you're having trouble accessing it, you can email us at support@digitalliteracyassessment.org. You can also contact me directly if you have questions about Northstar. And I'm sure Kristine is happy to be contacted about questions about standards and college and career readiness in particular. And since we have just a couple more minutes, so I might go back to our slide if I can. Maybe just leave us with some ideas of how you might incorporate some of these resources into your regular instruction, or maybe how you have. These resources have been available since the summer, so maybe you've already explored them a little bit. So let us know. And thank you very much. And someone just asked about sharing typos. If you find typos in the curriculum, please, yes, please put them in the feedback form. All feedback is good feedback.
Oh, yes, please. Because you know that Leah and I, have gone over these materials. Some of them I'm still reviewing, or we're still reviewing so many times that we become blind to typos and things like that. So thank you. Please let us know.
Yes, all feedback is good feedback, however small or large. And thank you, everyone. We hope that you reach out and let us know how you use these in your classroom or with questions. So thank you.